Hi, my name is John Bingham. I'm the Administrative Services Manager for the City of Calabasas. And this evening's public forum is being presented to answer questions and disseminate information regarding the Community Choice Energy and Program and the Los Angeles County Community Choice Energy Program, which the City of Calabasas is considering joining. At a recent council meeting, a joint powers agreement was introduced by the City Council to be adopted. Calabasas was the first city in the county to consider adopting the joint powers agreement to join the Los Angeles Community Choice Energy Program. And tonight we have experts in the field of community choice energy to explain what the programs are and how they will affect the residents and businesses in Calabasas. So to begin, I wanted to introduce our mayor, Mary Sue Maurer, to welcome you all, and she has a couple of opening comments. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, John, and thank you all for coming. This is wonderful. When the council discussed this back in May, I think there were just a couple people in the audience, and we knew immediately that we needed to get this information out to all of you, or as many as possible, and we will continue to provide opportunities like this and mailings so that your neighbors know what is available to them. It's all about choice. Let me start by acknowledging a couple of my other council members that are here. In the back of the room, we have Council Member David Shapiro. Councilmember Alicia Weintraub is also in the back. Our Mayor Pro Tem Fred Gaines is here. And we are expecting, I don't see him quite yet, Councilmember James Bazagian. So you have a full house of council members. If you haven't had a chance to talk to any of us before, be sure and say hello afterwards. We also have our city manager sitting in the back of the row who runs our city on the data. Stand up, Tony. All right, so we're going to get started here. But as I was saying, back in May, the city took the first step to embark on a journey of allowing residents the choice to purchase cleaner energy or not, to stay with Edison. And Edison will always be the provider of your power, but in this program that you'll be learning about tonight, you can choose to make a difference by buying solar or wind. And we'll be getting into a lot more detail about that in just a minute. This is the agenda this evening. As John mentioned, we have a variety of experts. Gary is from LA County and one of the architects and experts on the county's program that cities have an opportunity to opt in, and he'll be telling you about the program. We have Joseph from AppleValley. There have been a number of other cities and counties that have already embarked on this kind of program, primarily in Northern California, to great success. So this isn't something that hasn't been tried and a lot of success within. And Joseph is here to share kind of the bumps at the beginning and how stable it is and what a payoff it is to ratepayers. And then we also have Amanda. And Amanda runs an incubator downtown for businesses investing in green technology. There's quite a lot of economic incentives to become involved in green technology. So you'll be hearing about all of them. At the conclusion of our presentations, we have a stand-up microphone over here, and we welcome any and all questions that you might have. So feel free to get in a queue and ask your questions, take your notes. And all of the material, the PowerPoints that you see today, this presentation this evening will be posted on our website. So if you think you know someone else that might be interested in this, feel free to let them know that where this material is. And we also have a sign-in sheet if you want to have further information, because we're embarking on a few more phases of engagement here, and we do want the public to be informed and engaged and provide the council with some feedback. So without further ado, I'll bring John back up here to introduce our special guest. Thank you all again.
Thank you, Mary Sue. Our first speaker is the Chief Sustainability Officer for the County of Los Angeles, Gary Giroux. He is a nationally regarded environmental policy expert and LA County's first ever Chief Sustainability Officer, and he was appointed back in October of 2016. He is responsible for coordinating the Los Angeles County Community Choice Energy Program and engaging all 88 cities in the county related to joining the program also. He has spent 20 years working in local government and is very involved in this movement, and it is basically the program that we're going to join. So Gary, can you come on up?
Well, thank you, Mayor Maurer and members of the City Council and City Manager Corrales as well. And thanks, John, for that introduction. First of all, let me say it's just tremendous to see so many people out here. We've held a number of public workshops in the county as we've been putting this program together. And for a county-wide program, we've probably got 100 people. And I would imagine there's more than 100 people here today just for the city of Calabasas. So that's a real testament to your interest in civic engagement and I think the importance of this program. Let me, before I get into the slides, just a little bit tell a kind of a story of how we got to where we are today. The County of Los Angeles has been investigating community choice energy programs now for about 3 years, a little bit longer than 3 years. And 2 years ago, the Board of Supervisors specifically directed that we conduct a feasibility study, assess whether or not we could reasonably, cost-effectively, economically over the long term deliver lower cost, more renewable, more local energy to residents of the unincorporated areas and throughout the entire County of Los Angeles. A year ago, that study came back and in fact determined that, that we could. It showed what the rates would be, and I'll talk through some of that. And the recommendation from the staff, and this was before I was brought on as the Chief Sustainability Officer, the recommendation from the staff was we should do this. We should implement a community choice energy program starting in January of 2017, and we'll be out there and we'll be the biggest one in California. And the Board of Supervisors said, wow, this is a really great program. We don't see a downside. There's lower rates, there's greener energy, there's local jobs. But why are we doing this just as the County of Los Angeles for unincorporated areas? What about all the cities that could benefit too? And don't you think we would want to have everybody together working towards the same goal? And so they actually put a stop on the program, and they said, we're hiring a new Chief Sustainability Officer, and we're going to ask that person to go out and work with the 80-some cities in the County of LA to create a regional program so that everybody can benefit, because it's not just about the unincorporated area. And for those of you who follow politics at all, you probably know that 4 of the 5 board members are only been there for 2 years or less. And so there is a change in attitude at the Board of Supervisors, and they really do see themselves as serving the region as a whole and having the county provide assistance and support and leadership to cities, and that's exactly where we are today. And so we went back, we worked with the 80-some cities, we negotiated an agreement among cities that's completely voluntary for every city to join, and the Board of Supervisors adopted that in April of this year, and is now inviting cities to come adopt it with us, and I'll talk about some of the details of that. But I think it's indicative of the idea of wanting to be supportive of and showing regional leadership and really bringing all of the communities of the County of Los Angeles together, even if they're not in the unincorporated areas. The Board of Supervisors, they represent you whether you're in an incorporated city or in an unincorporated part of the county, and that they wanted to make sure everybody had those benefits. So just a brief introductory kind of anecdote on how we got to where we are today. So I'm going to talk about what this program is. So I'll take a little bit of time just explaining what it is and what it isn't. I'll talk about why the County Board of Supervisors is so excited about this program and what some of the benefits are. I'll talk about the business plan, the feasibility study that I mentioned that we've done now over the last 2 years. We'll talk about how we're going to work together with cities so that everybody is empowered. We do want to acknowledge there's risks and how we manage those risks. And then we'll talk about the schedule for next steps. And some of this, I will say, I'll probably skip over a little bit. Some of it is directed towards city councils when I make these presentations to city councils. May not necessarily be relevant for all of you. And we want to make sure you have plenty of time for questions as well. So the first thing to note is that of those 3 boxes you see on the left, we're only moving one of them into what we'll be providing as the Los Angeles Community Choice Energy Program. And that is, we're going to purchase power, or we'll start generating it ourselves. We're going to set the rates for that power, and we'll develop and implement customer programs. Those are the only 3 functions that we're taking from Southern California Edison. Southern California Edison will continue to operate the grid. They'll maintain the transmission and distribution system. So if there's a power outage, you would call Edison, not us. If you have a problem with your bill, you would call us. They will also provide, at least at the beginning, the meter reading and the billing services. So you'll continue to get your bill actually from Southern California Edison, but included in that bill, if you look at your bill today, there's a section that says power procurement charge or power generation charge. That's Edison, what they charge you for going out and procuring or generating that power. In the future, that'll say Los Angeles Community Choice Energy Power Generation Charge, and it'll be what we can provide at what we believe is lower cost. So that's the basic outline of the program. So we'll go out, we'll procure power on behalf of the businesses and the residents that are opted into the program. We'll set the rates for that power, and we'll operate some customer programs. And I'll talk about all of that in a little bit more detail. The reasons why now 75, 80 cities across California are doing this, have already done this, and why the state of California believes that 85% of all residents of the state of California will be in an area with this program as an option, is that there are a lot of benefits, and it makes a lot of sense. And California is not the only state that's done this. Illinois has done this. Most of Illinois is covered under what's called community choice energy. New Jersey, a number of other states have also done this. The first is that it for the first time gives you, as the customer, the choice of where you want to get your electricity from. Today, you have no choice. If you want electricity, you need electricity. It's not that you want, it's something that's a necessity. All you can do is go to Edison and get your electricity. And what this says is, now you have a second choice. Now you can get your electricity from this other program that's locally developed and locally controlled. Or if you don't like that, you can always stay with Edison. But it's really an option of having now 2 choices for where your energy is procured, where your rates are set. And rate setting is one of those things that I think is particularly important. Today, rates are set. Edison files on a quarterly basis a complete revision of their rates, adjustments of their rates. Those go up to San Francisco into this proceeding, as it's called. And to participate in that, you need to make a filing, and you tell them why you think the Edison rates are good or bad. And the PUC, this government body in San Francisco, makes those decisions. Quite frankly, there's very little ratepayer involvement in the PUC process because it is a difficult process. Here, we're going to have a group of local officials. There'll be somebody from the city of Calabasas, somebody from the city of Rolling Hills Estates, somebody from the city of San Fernando, wherever it happens to be, Malibu, and they'll be sitting together on a board making those rate decisions here locally, and you'll have the ability to come and make your case for why the rates should be changed and where they should be changed to. So having that customer choice and having that local control is really, really important. The other thing I'll say about that is that the local control aspect is not only around the rate setting, we'll be doing that, of course, but today for, say, a solar photovoltaic program on your roof or energy efficiency programs or any other programs that that Southern California Edison offers, that has to go through the same kind of proceeding at the California Public Utilities Commission in San Francisco. So if they want to offer something new and innovative, they have to write up a whole long justification. It goes through a 2 or 3 year funding and review cycle, and maybe the PUC approves it. And if the PUC approves it, they approve it for everybody in all of the territory of Edison. We're going to have the ability to start designing programs that meet our needs. We don't have to go through that kind of process. So if there's something good or interesting or innovative that a utility somewhere is doing, or if we come up with a good idea, we can move it through a local process and get that approved and out to residents and businesses quickly. I was talking to somebody in Sonoma County. They've had this program for about 5 years now, and she used to be what they call a product development manager for Southern California Edison. She's now doing that job in Sonoma. And she told me she comes up with an idea, and within 6 months, it can be out there being offered to residents, whether it's an electric vehicle program, whatever it happens to be. It took 2 or 3 years in the old days at PG&E where she was serving. The other, and it's a big one, of course, is the rate savings. So you've got the local control, but you also, we've done now this, what I called the business plan, the feasibility analysis twice. So we did it, as I said, last year, and we told the Board of Supervisors we could provide lower cost energy and greener energy than what Southern California Edison is providing. What we found was that at the base rate, what Edison today is providing about 28 or 30% renewable, at that standard rate, we could save 6% on utility rates across the board. And if we were offering 50% renewable energy, that would be actually 4% cheaper than what Edison's base rate is, and a whole lot cheaper. You can see here we're comparing it on this slide to a now, as a result of these community choice energy programs, Edison now offers a 50 and 100% product, but their prices are much higher. So we could offer a 50% product or a 100% product at less than Edison's providing. And that's a significant savings. When you think about how that money gets translated back into the economy, when you're thinking about a county as large as Los Angeles, where the county, of course, is 10 million people, about 5 million are eligible for this program. So customers of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power are not eligible because that's a municipal utility. Glendale, Burbank, and Pasadena, Vernon, and I think one other are not eligible. But still, there's 5 million people. When you start generating rate savings back into the economy, that's money in your pocket as a resident, and that's money back in your business as a business in the city that can be reinvested. The other driver for many people is if we can provide greener energy, that means we can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, I'm the chief sustainability officer, so this is important for me, but I actually have a background in the utility business as well. And I have written many climate action plans, and I can tell you that there is no one single thing more powerful than implementing a community choice energy program for achieving a community's climate action goals. This is something that we've seen over and over again in communities around the state. I've touched on this one a little bit, so I'll just sort of, again, summarize, but there are actually 2 ways that economic development occurs. One is, as I mentioned, these economic savings that go back to you, go back into your pocket. And that's money that can be reinvested. Our estimate was that's about $20 million annually that today is going to Southern California Edison that can go back into the community. And that's a lot of money, and that has multiplier effects. We did a macroeconomic model. You can see the jobs and the kind of benefits to the economy. The other is that we fully intend not just to be out in the market like an energy trader buying electricity for customers, but actually start building projects locally. We want to build local energy capacity to make the grid more resilient, to relieve pressure on the grid, and also to have our own stable source of electricity. So we're not subject to the market volatility of an energy market. We've estimated that for one 50 megawatt plant, and that's, the 50 megawatt may or may not be meaningful to you, most big power plants are about 500 megawatts. So a solar power plant, a small one, 50 megawatts, is probably enough that would cover an acre or 2 of land. For one 50 megawatt power plant, that's 1,500 construction jobs that would be employed. And so we have a demand, if everybody joins us, of about 2,000 to 3,000 megawatts. So if you multiply if you divide rather 50 megawatt plants into 2,000 or 3,000 megawatts, that's a lot of power plants, a lot of local solar power plants we can be starting to build. And that was a way of also stimulating economic activity here locally, as well as supporting the grid. So I told this story already, where the board asked us to do a business plan. We did that business plan. We came back to them. When we did that business plan, we looked at all of the cities in the county that were eligible. We didn't just do it for the unincorporated areas. And as you can see, it came back with we could provide cheaper and greener power than Edison. And one of the things the business plan did, and this is true of any good business plan, of course, is it looks at what are all the risks, where are the assumptions, and where should we test the assumptions. And it actually said, not only is this a risk, and this a risk, and this a risk, and here's kind of what its potential impact is, but it said if all of these things that are unlikely actually happen at the same time, could this still be a viable business? Does it still have the ability to compete? And the answer was yes. It's not going to be able to offer the same rates if all of those things that we assume aren't going to happen do happen, and they all happen simultaneously. But even if they did, it determined that the rates we could provide would actually be competitive with Edison's current rates. And that was true over a 20-year horizon. Now, how you project out energy markets and other things over a 20-year horizon gets very speculative, but we wanted to look at it not just are we going to be able to save money in the short term for residents, but can we do this over the long term? So as I said, the board told us to go out and do this together. That's what we did. We went out and negotiated, and in April, the board took the action. And the action that the board took was not only to approve the program itself, and not only to approve this agreement between cities and counties, but the county board of supervisors said, we're going to put money up front on this, and we're going to loan this program $10 million in startup funding at no interest to actually get the program launched. We don't think it's reasonable. We don't think it's, it's just not cost effective for us to go to every community that's going to participate and say, oh, based on your load, you owe 10,000 or you owe 50,000 or you owe 100,000. It's like, let's just pay for all of the cities together. We'll loan the program the money. We'll get paid back once the money starts the program actually starts generating revenue. And so it actually gave us that authority. We have $10 million that it's in the budget starting July 1st when our fiscal year starts, and that's money that's available and we'll be using to launch the program. So I mentioned this agreement that I've been working with cities to negotiate, and I want to talk a little bit about it just so you know a little bit about how this is governed. And the first thing to know is that, and I think it may be the most important thing to know, is that the county gets 1 seat and 1 vote, and the city of Calabasas gets 1 seat and 1 vote, and the city of Agoura Hills and the city of Santa Monica, and on and on. It's 1 member, 1 vote. And that's something that took a lot for the county to get over. As you can imagine, we're coming in with 1 million people as part of the program. We'll have economies of scale from the outset. But we wanted to, as I said, the board wanted to bring cities into the fold and said, let's create a system that will have 1 member, 1 vote that'll give equitable representation to every representative. And we didn't invent this idea. This idea came from how some of the programs in Northern California are operating. There's an option in that program. So it's if, in fact, there's something that the membership as a whole approves, there's an option for any member to call for a weighted vote. And that's only following an affirmative act of the board. So if the membership turns something down, and the first vote is always just the membership 1 vote, 1 member, 1 vote. But if the membership turns something down, it's dead. No matter how much weighted vote you have, you can't bring it back to life. But if the membership approves something, and on a weighted vote basis, a member says, you know what, we think that needs to be modified, or we don't like the way that was done, they can get 2 other members to join with them, and they could call for a weighted vote. There's no guarantee that they'll be successful on that weighted vote. We did an analysis of what the county share of a weighted vote would be if all of the cities that were eligible to join, and it's something like 13%. So we alone don't have 50% share. We don't have anything close to it. The next closest member is Long Beach with something like 10%, and the next closest member after that, I think, is Torrance, and with something like 6%. So the three largest members would control something on the order of 25 to 30% of the votes. That's nowhere near close enough to get 50% majority. So you really do need to work collaboratively. And up north, where they have had this structure in place for now 7 years in Marin and 5 years in Sonoma, they have never called for a weighted vote, not in a single instance. They have always worked things out collaboratively and come to a consensus on how to proceed. But we built that into the governance. The others, and it may be less interesting to you, there's some committees, including a community advisory committee. So we'll have community members there advising us along the way. And as I said, every community will have a director that's appointed as well as some alternates. So that's all the sort of the good news. Let me just talk for a second about the risks, because I want to be honest, we want to make sure that we're addressing those. We're not going to hide from these. The first, of course, is that the energy market could change quickly. We could see volatility in the energy market, so that's something we need to be aware of. We could have customers leave us, and if a lot of customers leave us and go back to Edison, then that means the remaining customers have to pick up a bigger share of the administrative costs. So that's a concern, and we tested that actually. We tested that up to 20% opt-out rate. So we assumed that 20% of the customers went back to Edison. In the real world, in the programs we've seen, between 4 and 7% of customers leave the program. But we tested 20%. And there's ways to mitigate that. Edison does have the right to charge us some costs, and so there could be some unreasonable costs associated with what they charge us. What they charge us for the transmission and distribution and what they charge us for the meter reading and billing has to be exactly the same whether you're in Edison territory or whether you're in a CCA. But they have what are called legacy contracts. They've entered into long-term agreements for power. And now that we're leaving, they're left, in the sense, trying to dispose of that power since they no longer need it. They do have the ability under California law to try to charge us for that power or for whatever the delta is between what they bought the power at and what they sold it at. So we're working closely with Edison to try to make sure that that's reasonable and fair. And the state of California, of course, is adjudicating those questions. And then, of course, the regulatory structure could always change. So how you manage those risks is particularly important. First of all, for the changes to the market, there's a couple of things. One, you've got to make sure you've got a broad portfolio. You've got different kinds of energy. You're not putting all your eggs in the solar basket or the wind basket, but you've got some solar, you've got some wind, you've got some natural gas, you've got some geothermal if that's available, you've got some hydro if that's available. And then you also have a mix of long-term and short-term contracts. So you may have some power that's contracted for 2 years, some for 5, some for 10. And so you start to mix an energy portfolio to try to manage or hedge risks. This is the same thing you've heard whenever you're talking to a financial advisor. What do I do with my money? Well, put it in a mutual fund because you spread it across as much possible risk as possible. That's the same thing we're doing. We're not going to put our eggs in one basket. We're not buying one stock. The other is to make sure that we're actually accumulating revenue and building up a cash reserve so that when energy prices do get volatile, we have money in the bank that can help tamper down that so that we don't have to pass those higher costs or those volatile costs on to residents, on to the customers. So we'll have, and this is exactly what they're doing in Marin in the last couple of years. They saw some energy spikes and they were able to pay down the rates so that the rates remain stable despite their procurement costs going up. And then we're very engaged, of course, at the state level and with Edison, and that manages the unreasonable costs. So as I said, the business plan at the end of it concluded there were no reasonable set of risks that would harm the ability for us to be competitive. And in fact, we went out and hired an independent third party to assess that plan. And that independent third party reviewed our plan, issued a report that's available on our website. That person came to your city council a couple of weeks ago and spoke about their independent assessment of our business plan. So there's a couple of other things that come up, and this is sometimes in the really for local governments, so I'll go quickly, but franchise fees don't change. Utility user tax, you pay a tax today on, or I'm not sure if Calabasas imposes one, but in some places there's a utility user tax. That doesn't change. The only difference is that we collect it, and we collect it on a lower rate base, so you're actually, as a customer, paying a lower total amount of utility user tax. The programs, I think I've talked about, we'll be able to develop those locally, and I've talked about what Edison will do. We're anticipating that over time we would take on that meter reading and billing function. This is something we want to do for our customers. We want to have that direct relationship. Meter reading today is not done by people driving around, as you know, looking at meters. It's all done electronically with data communicated back to servers. But actually getting something, a physical bill or an email bill, electronic bill, from the provider of the electricity, we think is important. And that way we can communicate with you about customer programs. So the schedule is that now, between now and the next 6 months, the $10 million that the county is providing covers any cities that join. So if one city joins, or 10 city joins, or 50 or 100, we've said we will cover the cities that join in the next 6 months on that no-cost loan. And in January of next year, so 6 months from now, we will start delivering electricity. And we're going to start delivering electricity first to the county's facilities in the unincorporated areas of the county. And we have about 2,000 accounts, 2,000 buildings spread throughout the county and unincorporated areas. And the reason that we're going first is that we want to be the guinea pig. We don't want you as a customer to get a bad bill, and we don't know how the transition is going to work with Edison. So we said, we'll take the bad bills, we'll work through the data and billing issues with Edison. And once we're comfortable that they've got that the sending of data back and forth between us and them works and isn't causing any problems, then we'll roll out to commercial and industrial customers, so business customers, and that's probably about 200,000 customers or maybe 250,000 customers. So that's a big jump, and we're going to make sure that that's working correctly. And once that's working correctly, then we'll start rolling out to residents. And that's probably something on the order of 1 million or more than 1 million accounts, depending on how many cities come in. And so that'll be phased in over time. That won't happen overnight. And when this happens, there'll be plenty of public notice to everybody who's a customer of Edison, 60 days in advance, 30 days in advance, upon entry into the program, 30 days after the program has started, and 60 days after the program, you will get notices telling you this is coming, this is happening, now this has happened, and you have the ability to leave at any time. Go back to Edison if you like. So I don't need to talk too much about what cities need to do because your city has already gone through some of these steps. But we are asking cities to join us because we want to, one, enjoy the economies of scale that come with having a lot of cities as part of it, but also we want to make sure that these benefits extend to all residents of the county. So with that, I'll conclude. I know we will have a couple of other presentations, and then I'm happy to stay and answer as many questions as may come up. You've got my contact information there, including our website. On our website, there's a lot of documents and materials, so you can go there and dig in as deeply as you want. Our business plan is there, the revised business plan, the third-party review of the business plan, and other communication materials. So again, thank you. It's great to see so many people out here today, and happy to have been here.
Thanks, Gary. And all those documents and materials that Gary mentioned, a lot of them are on the City of Calabasas' website also. Our next speaker is Joseph Moon. He is the Assistant Director of Energy and Environmental Services for the town of AppleValley, who will present his experiences related to a slightly different model of CCE from a town/city perspective. Mr. Moon has 27 years of public sector experience working with cities in environmental services. He also worked in the past for Southern California Edison. He currently directs the AppleValley Choice Energy Community Choice Aggregation Program, which serves the residents and businesses within the town of Apple Valley, and which they just launched their full phase operation in April of 2017. Mr. Moon.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you to the mayor and all the council members and John and everyone here in Calabasas. You all are very fortunate to be a part of what is to come. Community choice aggregation is basically the wave of the future, because as Gary so eloquently pointed out, before you had no choice. Before, if you needed power, you would get it from Southern California Edison. You took what they gave you. You had very little input in the mix of that electricity. You had very little input in how they purchased it or how they distributed it or anything. But now, with community choice aggregation, you do have that choice. Our program is AppleValley Choice Energy. We did not start this program on a whim. We've actually been looking at community choice aggregation since 2010. We did our first feasibility study in 2010. It came back that it was not feasible. We subsequently updated that feasibility study every year, and in 2015, it did come back showing that if we implemented the program, it would be successful. Apple Valley, I'll just give you a little bit of our history. We're a community of about 72,000, very large area in square miles, as you can see, 75 square miles. We are located in San Bernardino County in the Inland Empire area. If you've ever driven up Interstate 15 heading to Vegas, you pass right by us. You probably don't know it, but we're there close to Victorville. We consider ourselves a little bit unique. The minimum lot size in Apple Valley is a half acre. That would be premium property here, I would imagine. But we're unique by choice. Apple Valley was the home of Roy Rogers. Some of you probably know Roy, knew of him. The younger people were like, who's that? Google Trigger, it'll come up. We have what we call a dark sky policy. What that is at night we have no street lights except for at the major intersections. Everywhere else is dark, and that's by choice, because we like to look at the stars. We like that sort of feel. So we designed our community choice aggregation program to the citizens of Apple Valley. Gary has pointed out that with LA County, it's going to incorporate all of the cities in LA County, and that is absolutely fantastic, because now you'll have input in how your energy services are provided. As I mentioned, we did our first feasibility study in 2010. We finally got the numbers to come out right in 2015. We implemented or submitted our implementation plan last year in May. That implementation plan has to be reviewed by the CPUC. The CPUC does not necessarily certify it, but they basically make sure that all of the elements of your implementation plan are in place so that you can successfully procure power and be able to provide it to your citizens. We did our final procurement agreements in January of this year, and we launched in April of this year. So we are up and we're operational. Prior to launching, as Gary mentioned, we held several community forums. We actually had 6 community forums. We notified everyone by postcard 60 days prior. 30 days prior, we notified on launch, and we're notifying up until the 60 days after we implement it. And what we found is, like what you have here, we found that our citizens were very interested in what we were doing, and they were very concerned about how this program would work. Some were under the misinterpretation that we were taking over Edison. Of course, we can't. We're only 72,000 people. And what we told our citizens is that you're still going to be an Edison customer. Edison still owns the transmission lines. They still will read your meters. They'll still send out the billing and all that. You're still an Edison customer. The only difference in your bill is that energy generation part. That's where we come in. And we were able to, our council sets our rates, where with LA County, you will have a board similar to what our county is. And the good thing about that is you can come right there to that board and express your concerns. I mean, if you're concerned about the energy mix, talk to them. You can do that. Where if you went before the CPUC, you're not going to be heard. We had I attended an en banc meeting at the CPUC probably about 4 months ago. And one of the things that they said is that CCAs are primarily for the rich that live along the coast. And I got up and I told them, well, you know, you can't really see the coast from AppleValley. I mean, no matter how far you get up on that mountain, you can't see it. It's not for the rich along the coast. It's for everyone who really values the generation of their energy. Everyone who has a concern about greenhouse gases, everyone who has a concern about energy rates, everyone who has a concern about how you can shape your future energy is a part of this. And you have a great opportunity with the county to be able to join and be able to be a part of their program. The town of AppleValley, we currently offer 2 programs. Our base program is a 35% renewable program. We also offer a 50% renewable program. That's a $2 premium over the 35%. And that's to meet the, we exceed the state mandate. Currently the state mandate is calling for 30% renewable in 2020. So we're already well above where we need to be. And we've had multiple citizens and businesses opt up to that 50% renewable rate because they are concerned about the environment and they don't mind the premium that's charged to get there. And as a matter of fact, our rates are set to where even if you opted up to 50%, you're still lower than, your rates are still on the generation portion lower than what Edison's current rates are. Our opt-out percentage so far is right around 7.5%. And that's higher than what we anticipated, and there's a reason for that. The reason why it's higher is because we also we're in the process of acquiring our water company, and a lot of citizens were a little bit upset with that, so they sort of associated us with the water company takeover, which we're not doing that. But what we've found since we've launched is now there are a lot of people opting back in. They opted out. They're listening to their neighbors, and they're opting back in, and we welcome that. So, so our rate is a little over 7, but it's declining. So we're hoping that we'll be right around the 5% that we thought that we would be once we started this program. Question is, do we have a Citizens Advisory Council? And if so, how large is it? We don't. The council is planning on implementing that at the beginning of the year. One of the reasons why we did not is because the citizens in AppleValley, like you all here, they're very active. We have a very active adult community, senior community, and we have a very active working community. They are in full attendance at the council meetings where I'm supposed to be tonight. And they're able to come to the council and voice their concerns. But we are going to implement the Citizens Advisory Council because we want the citizens of AppleValley to shape what we're doing. The council sets the rates as Gary mentioned, we don't have to go before the CPUC to set our rates. The council can do that same way with the way the board would do it for LA County. The advantage to that is that you can do it very quickly. I mean, you don't have to go through a long, drawn-out process in order to adjust your rates. If there's a opportunity for the county to purchase power, and they can see that with the purchase of that power, they're able to drop the rates, they can do that. I mean, you don't have to go through a long process. So it's a great advantage to be able to move that quickly. I'm going to hold off questions until the end, but one of the things I did want to mention with AppleValley, we're a little bit different. We are standalone CCA. What that means is that we're not a part of a JPA. There's a couple of reasons why we went that route. For one, the county of San Bernardino decided not to enter into a JPA. So they are not entering into a JPA where they're bringing other cities in. AppleValley and Lancaster are really the only two standalone CCAs in California, and we are the only two that are currently in Southern California Edison's territory. And as a result of that, we have cleared the way for everyone to come. It was quite a challenge because this is new for Edison too. Just to be fair to them, this is new for them too. So they, a lot of the things that are required to put the CCA together and to make it work was new to Edison also. So they had to bring on their personnel. They had to update some of their software. They had to implement some programs that were never that they were never involved in before. And to our benefit, the city of Lancaster paved the way for some of those. But even then, when we came along, there were still quite a few major hiccups along the way. So hopefully we smoothed out most of those. So you will benefit from our headaches. But what I tell everyone is that we're not in competition with Edison. They're not our adversary. We're actually working together. We work together to make sure that what's provided to the citizens, in our case for AppleValley, is the best for them. And I'm sure that's what the county is going to do also. They're going to work with Edison. You will still be an Edison customer. And they're going to make sure that what you get is what you're desiring. You'll have a voice, and that, I think, is the major advantage to being a part of the CCA that the county is proposing. So I'll hold off on questions until the end, but I can say that AppleValley is very happy. The citizens are very happy with what we have done. They're saving money. They're also being able to have a voice in the type of energy that we purchase. And so far, so good. So thank you.
Thanks, Joseph. And one more thing before the last speaker that I wanted to mention is we invited Southern California Edison to participate in this forum, but they declined, citing their code of conduct, which prohibits them from taking a position for or against CCAs. They have to remain neutral. But as a couple of the speakers have mentioned, they have stated over and over again that they're committed to a smooth transition for all customers that go to CCAs. So without further ado, our last speaker this evening is Amanda Sabbath. She's Vice President, Energize California, the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, and she's going to address the regional green economy and its potential positive effects on Calabasas. Energize California is a project funded by the California Energy Commission, and it connects and convenes energy communities in Santa Barbara, Ventura, LA, and Orange County in order to support California's green energy goals. And Amanda will also expand on what Energize California and the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator is all about. Amanda Sabasir.
Good evening. Thank you to the council members, the mayor, and John for inviting me here today. I'm really excited to be here. Do you guys know how beautiful your city is, by the way? I used to work at Amgen, so I was out here all the time, and now I live in Claremont, which I also think is very beautiful. And I used to have accounts when I was working for Amgen in AppleValley, so I feel very connected to this whole panel right now. It's gorgeous here today. Wow. So thank you for having me. I'm the odd duck on the panel. I'm the one who kind of represents private sector stakeholders in this conversation, and talk a little bit more about the green economy, so less about the policy and the government context. A little bit about Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator and Energize California before I share a couple of thoughts. The Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator is a nonprofit that's located in downtown LA and was formed as a joint initiative by the Mayor's Office of LA and Los Angeles Department of Water and Power when those two organizations realized that, this is back in 2008 through 2011, that there's a real opportunity to build a green economy here in the Los Angeles region because we have an amazing manufacturing base and we have tons of people coming out from academic institutions with lots of great ideas and innovations. And if we could just get those innovations into the marketplace, it would really help build the economy and drive the environmental impact we're all looking for. So we run a business incubator that helps support clean tech startups. For any of you who are investors, these numbers will resonate with you. We've helped over 65 companies since we were founded in 2011. Those companies have created over 1,200 jobs and have raised over $120 million in investment. So we're proud of our work. We know we have a lot more to do. And that's where Energize California comes in. It's a program that John mentioned. We just received $5 million from the Energy Commission to start knitting together the clean energy ecosystems that exist in Santa Barbara, Ventura, Orange, and Los Angeles counties. Why do we need to do that? Just take a second and think about this for a minute. The state has invested, it's probably $1 gazillion, if that's a technical term, into R&D through a variety of programs to try to come up with new innovations that will support the energy future. The problem is when you have R&D and you have no business to support it, you have a paperweight. Therefore, not focusing just on R&D, but also focusing on building an ecosystem that can support that innovation and make sure it gets out into the marketplace is critical for the future. Try that a little tall, what can I say? So that's where Energize California comes in. We are out there at meetings like this, meeting people, talking to folks, saying, please join our network. There's a flyer that I hope all of you picked up. It's just send us your email and a little information, and we're gonna start hosting events and getting people together so we can have conversations just like this about clean energy and our energy future as a region. One other thought about that I wanna share is we're also specifically looking for clean energy entrepreneurs. So if you're a researcher or you know somebody who is doing anything in that space and is trying to start a company, encourage them to apply to our Innovators program. It's free for 12 months. We give them an action plan and we connect them with all sorts of networks of investors, pilots, research facilities, competitions, business plan support, technical services, et cetera. So that's my plug. Now I talk about the good stuff. This is the fun stuff. I'm a total energy nerd, so I could talk about this all day. John told me I had 5 minutes. I'm probably already over, so I'll try to be quick. Number one, what this conversation that we're having today is not happening in a vacuum. I think Joseph came from AppleValley. Gary has been doing the world's longest roadshow talking about this to every city, and he's been incredible. And every time I hear you, Gary, I get so inspired and excited about what's going on here. The California Public Utilities Commission and the Energy Commission both agree this is the future of the retail space in the energy sector. So just know that in Sacramento, sometimes we feel ignored down here, but they actually are on the same page on this. So keep that in mind. Number two, you guys are not the first. Maybe in some ways you are here locally. But this kind of model has been happening across the country. Gary mentioned it. In some ways, California itself is a laggard in terms of embracing this. So don't be nervous about that part, because other people have done it before, and the fact that they've made their mistakes means we don't have to make the same ones. We get to leapfrog over some of those problems. So keep that in mind. And that includes Northern California, by the way, not just other states. Number 3, in the utility space, they've talked a lot about the sleeping consumer. I don't know if any of you heard that comment before, but you can imagine if you have a regulated monopoly and you're the consumer and you know you have no voice, how active are you going to be? How much are you going to feel like you have ownership and responsibility? I feel like I do my part when I turn off my light switch. I'm saving the environment, right? This is changing the paradigm. This conversation today that's happening throughout the county is waking everybody up. Look how many people are in this room. You are all awake. This is part of our new energy future. So this conversation, the timing is great, because I mentioned before, the state is understanding what's going on here. And I can tell you from where I stand, when I talk to innovators and entrepreneurs, they're super excited about the R&D funding. They're super excited that Energize at California is out there, but they're really excited about conversations like this, because now, one of their biggest problems is, how do I get a consumer to care? You're going to care now, because you're part of the solution. Local control, I think, is the streamlined process that Joseph was talking about. The fact that you guys can move innovation through your ecosystem more quickly and into your homes and into your businesses more quickly is incredibly powerful. Procurement traditionally can be months. It's a death spiral for innovation. So this is a great opportunity. And lastly, I don't know how big a conversation it is here in Calabasas, but resiliency is a big topic, certainly across the country, and in many areas in the LA region. This is an opportunity to think about resiliency in terms of not only grid resiliency, but also economic resiliency, because there will be an opportunity for local jobs if it's developed right, and environmental resiliency, because we're able to reduce greenhouse gases, and then all the social impact of being an awake consumer and thinking about, wow, I actually am connected to these other people. My decisions do matter. And so when there are shocks to our environment or our ecosystem, whether it's environmental or economic, we have infrastructure and ways to connect with each other to solve those problems. So that makes for nimble decision making. So I think I'll leave it there and just say, this is such a great audience. I'm so excited to see you all here. And please come up and introduce yourself if you know anybody or you just want to connect. I love meeting folks. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Now is the time for question and answers. And if you'd like, you can queue up here at this microphone to ask your questions. So go ahead.
Do we give her a name? Phyllis Scher. Can you hear me? I don't really need this. I had a few questions, some of them which were answered along the way, about the bouncing back and forth between having, this is to Gary. These are actually questions all to Gary. Bouncing back and forth between, I'm going to take it, and then a couple of months later, no, I don't like it, and going, I'm guessing there's no limit as far as going back and forth between taking it and unsubscribing, subscribing.
There's no limit, although I think Edison, at least in Northern California, PG&E says if you leave us, you can't come back for 6 months, and they charge $1.50 to sign you back up.
Okay. And the other thing is, you talk a lot about Southern California Edison, but not DWP. Does that mean, is that, I realize that we're all here in Calabasas under SoCal Edison, but I have a business in Northridge, which is DWP. So is that going to be a different program, or?
That will be DWP. There will be no option there.
Okay, no option. Oh,
by state law.
So it's only Southern California Edison.
It's only Edison territory.
Okay, well that's good to know. The other question I have is, in Southern California, Edison offers what they call the CARE program for seniors.
Right.
Is that still going to be?
That continues.
Continues, okay. And lastly, so I think someone else will talk about solar, so I'm going to pass that. Oh, forget it. I'm sitting there and talking. I'm listening to all these things, and it's like, it sounds like Southern California Edison's getting the short end of the stick in terms of money, and I'm saying to myself, gee, if I were them, why wouldn't I want to stick it to these customers? How do they make the money? How are they going to come out of all of this?
They will make money by transmission and distribution charges. So in fact, this model where you separate the power procurement from the transmission and distribution has been implemented in many, many jurisdictions across the world. There's an inherent conflict of interest if you're delivering the electricity and also procuring that power and selling it to residents. And so in some places, governments have said you can either be a wires company or you can be a power procurement company. So they will continue to charge us for the delivery of electricity. And that won't change, and that has to be exactly the same between whether you're a CCA customer or Edison customer. They can't charge different rates for delivering power. And they'll also continue to charge for the meter reading and the billing services, so those services. So they'll continue to make money, and in fact, under the current structure, they are not allowed to make a profit on the power procurement that they do on behalf of customers. That has to be a straight pass-through. The reason why we can be cheaper is they've entered into some longer term and maybe not as wise contracts as they should have over the last 10 or 15 years, and the market has changed significantly. So we're going to be able to come in and take advantage of better market conditions than they have.
Thank you. Thank you to all your speakers.
Can I also address that just a little bit? I used to work for Southern California Edison, and I worked in their generation division, and this was when Edison was actually generating the majority of their power. They don't really generate as much of their power anymore. They purchase it, similar to what the county would be doing and what we do. So because we're not tied to some of the long-term contracts that Edison is tied to, we're able to purchase that power quickly and pass those savings on to our customers. I used to tell our citizens, don't cry for Edison. They're still making good money. I'm still a stockholder with Edison, so I make sure they're making a profit.
I just want to make sure they're not going to stick it to us.
But their business model has changed. It's changing. They are into the distribution and the customer service side of the business, and this part, the small part that the CCA has, is the energy generation portion. So,
thank you.
What you've presented tonight is sounds like a no-brainer. Sounds all good. And I have a simple question. Is there an argument against it? Is there anyone saying this is a bad idea?
The only argument that I've heard, and I've been to a lot of cities, is that they don't believe that this is an appropriate role for government, that government shouldn't be providing that service. We should leave it to the private sector.
I've heard that one before. That's it, huh?
That's the only one I've had.
Well, that's not much. Let's have cookies.
I second that motion.
Well, I had my cookie before you all started, so I'm ready to roll. A couple of questions. One is, in the last year or so, I've made substantial changes to my energy demand, consumption. I have solar panels that cover my roof. I've changed a pool filter motor. I've done the air conditioning thing. My consumption is a fraction of what it was.
Good for you.
And I'm very, very happy about that, not only in terms of the world order, but in terms of my pocketbook. Sure. So there are a couple of things that Edison offers, and I'm hoping to hear that this would offer as well. For instance, there's for when I generate more electricity than I use, I get a credit. Mm-hmm. Some years it's big, sometimes it's small, and so I'm expecting that to continue. Right. And follow on from there is I have an electric vehicle. I have time of use pricing. so that I run most of my demand is in the super off-peak hours after 10 o'clock at night, because it's a rate that's significantly more favorable.
Sure.
I mention that to people in DWP land, and they go, "What is that?" And I'm wondering if that kind of pricing scheme would continue. I would hope that our city would decide that that kind of pricing scheme is appropriate for our jurisdiction.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea, in fact, what we've seen, we haven't designed our rates yet, but we would start with the foundation of what are Edison's current rates, and time of use is part of their current rate structure. And we would look at, okay, what can we do in that regard? So I think you would probably continue to have time of use rates that would be very favorable. Although I will say, their time of use rates, the off-peak is starting to change, because now there is so much solar. You may have seen the article in the LA Times, so much solar during the day that there's actually an abundance, and we're paying Arizona and other places to
Yes.
take that power off our hands. So we may want to encourage you to start charging your electric vehicle in the daytime rather at night. As far as the what's called net energy metering rate that you're on for the solar PV, what we've seen in Northern California, and this is probably something that we would want to emulate, is it's similar but actually more generous. And it's more generous in two ways. One, whatever the retail rate of the electricity is that you pay is what we'll pay you for generating. So there's no discount on what you get paid for generating electricity and what you buy electricity at. And at the end of the year, now you get a credit, and that credit is actually significantly discounted. What we've seen in Northern California is just 100% payout. If you've got credit, we'll send you a check at the end of the year for all that you've over-generated.
Last year, I owed them money after my 12 months. This year, which starts in March 1 to March 31, and they owe me money now this year. Second question is, one of the issues I followed is the decommissioning of San Onofre, and I'm waiting for the balloon payment on that through SCE. And what would happen, would the CCA absorb any of that cost? Because my understanding is that the PUC and others have decided that ratepayers have to pay for the decommissioning of that, although there are lawsuits have been filed to make that go away.
Right. The short answer is that all customers of Edison, whether they're now in a CCA or they're not, are likely going to face those kinds of costs. Those will be sort of, as I mentioned during the presentation, there are some legacy costs from what Edison either entered into contracts they now need to discard or have costs. You benefited, I guess, in a way, as all of us did, from having San Onofre there as a baseload plant. Now that it's being decommissioned, everyone is expected to pick up their share.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation tonight. It's very informative. If the benefits are all that you mentioned, why do 4 to 7% of those who sign up back out?
There's two reasons. One is the sort of philosophical that goes to the other question, why are people maybe opposing this? The other is there are some customers who are on special negotiated rates. And so that 4 to 7% doesn't necessarily mean total customers, it means total power delivered. And some very, very large customers sometimes are able to negotiate sweet deals. We're hopeful to be able to keep them and negotiate similar kind of deals for them, but that's just a fact of life.
Another group too is the Edison employees. They get a special discount for being an Edison employee. So they do not they opt out of the system in general also.
But I thought I understood it that the 4 to 7% represented those who had signed up for the program and then backed out. Do I have a misunderstanding on that?
No, it's an opt-out program. So everyone is in the program to start, and then you have the opportunity to opt out.
Okay.
And the opt-out rate is what we indicated.
All right. One other question regarding the rate structure. If the portion of the residents who sign up for this obtain better rates, as you claim on the charts that you've shown, what happens to the balance of the consumers who stay with SCE? Are they going to be facing a rate increase of any kind because of the lack of that billing going to SCE for the acquisition of the power?
This is an ongoing discussion with Edison. We'll say that they don't feel that it's fair, of course, that remaining customers pay any costs for departing load. And so they have filed a methodology for calculating that. If you're familiar with contracts, it's kind of the hold harmless clause. You bought it. We all, as customers of Edison, in some way bought that power. And so if we're leaving, then we have to pay for what we paid for, or what we bought. How you calculate that gets to be very complicated, but Edison wants to make sure, of course, that the remaining customers are held harmless, just as we want our customers who are now departing to be held harmless. That will be a negotiation, a discussion, and ultimately decided by the California Public Utilities Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you for an interesting presentation. I have what I consider a practical question. Where are you going to get the power you're going to sell us?
Everywhere and anywhere that it's low cost and fulfills the portfolio kind of the approach that we want to look at. So we're going to be buying solar and wind and hydro and geothermal and probably a fair amount of natural gas as well. And we're going to get it mostly on the marketplace to begin. I think Joseph can talk about how their procurement strategy is going, but I think 100% of their power today is coming out of the marketplace. Over time, we want to actually start building our own resources.
You'll be building solar farms?
Solar farms and paying customers to put solar on their roofs, paying cities to put it in their parking lots, everything else.
Okay, but right now you have no sources of power. You have to go out and get them.
That's right.
Okay. Second question has to do with the economy. Whether I pay Edison or I pay you, it's staying in the economy. So where is this big windfall to the Los Angeles economy? I don't see that.
The windfall comes from the fact that you're paying us less, so you have more money in your pocket to go buy other things and stimulate economic activity.
Okay, de minimis amount, but okay.
Well, if you're a business, it's not de minimis. If your electricity bill is $5,000 or $50,000 a month, 5% savings is real money for that business.
Wish that it were. But it's not. Thank you.
I'm concerned about the grid and the improvement of it and the protection of it. How are you involved in that?
The short answer is that Edison will continue to be responsible for maintaining the grid, as well as what's known as the California Independent System Operator, which is a government entity that manages the grid on behalf of the entire state of California. So they will continue to make sure that loads are balanced and we don't have rolling blackouts or brownouts. That said, if we actually start to build local energy resources, we can work with Edison looking at where there are vulnerabilities in the grid, and we can start to put power plants, solar plants, where it will help support grid stability over the longer term. But the grid will continue to be maintained by Southern California Edison.
Can I also address that?
Yeah, of course.
One of the requirements of any CCA, matter of fact, of any generator that CPC requires is that you not only provide 100% of your energy usage, you have to actually provide 115%. So you and that's so that there's stability in the grid, because where we're at, the days get hot. Sometimes your forecast is short of what you originally projected. So there is a mechanism in place with CAISO, as Gary mentioned, to where you actually have procured 115% of your anticipated need, and that's a requirement of all CCAs or any energy provider.
Can I just add one more thing to that? So they've done comparative analysis of what's happening in Denmark and Germany, where they have a higher portfolio of renewables in their energy mix, and they actually have shown that it's more stable in terms of grid resiliency than, for instance, France, which has nuclear power, which you think would be providing very stable base load. So the technology and the innovation has changed the dynamics. And you can see, I think Rick Perry is going to be coming out with his statement on the importance of baseload, and it's going to be an interesting conversation depending on what he says. Is an argument is that you need to have fossil fuels to provide a stable grid, and I think there's some data there to suggest that it's maybe not as necessary as they're thinking.
Okay, well, defense of the grid is so important. Will that be something that Edison and the other power people take care of, and then they charge you when they sell you electricity that will include the protection?
Right. The services they provide protecting the grid from whatever it happens to be is built into the rates they charge for delivering electricity.
Thank you.
My question is similar to hers. I was going to ask you specifically about cybersecurity, ransomware, and perhaps holding all those meters out of the Internet of Things hostage or manipulating them. And I know you said that you're just going to use that infrastructure from Southern California Edison. So I just wanted to make sure in your risk that maybe you include that or bring it up to highlight.
Yeah,
who might be liable. Right?
That's a particularly important question for anybody that's got customer information, and we take that one very seriously. The fact is, we will only have one connection to Edison, that they will send us meter data, so we won't actually have access to the meters themselves. We'll have they'll aggregate the meter data, send that to us in a batch file. We'll calculate the bills and send them back how much to actually assess. But that whole system will have to be particularly strengthened against. We've seen the kind of cyber attack we had today again. So obviously we know there's a lot of risks out there in terms of cybersecurity.
Right. Thank you. I have another question. I still remember Enron and the whole manipulation of energy contracts, if you will. So I'm all for this because I think, being independent may offer an alternative to that. But I, for one, don't really want to see another Enron happen. So I'm hoping that, somehow these contracts, and this is an alternative, might alleviate and not repeat history in that case. So I just wanted to know the thoughts on that, because you're basically kind of in the business of buying contracts, kind of like what Enron supposedly was doing for the betterment of everybody. And I think they costed California something along the lines of $40 billion, and the people absorbed it, right? So,
right.
How does Southern California Edison or yourself, how do we avoid something like that? How do we avoid kind of this conflict of interest, if you will?
Right, and I remember Enron as well. I was actually in the utility business at the time. Joseph may have been as well. What the legislature, when they created the legislation that allowed for communities to become the aggregators and providers of electricity, were very clear and still smarting from the effects of that. And that's why this is only eligible to governments. So the legislature, in its wisdom, said, we made a mistake before. We let the private sector come in, and the private sector manipulated the energy market. Here, we're only going to allow governments to come in. We trust and know that governments will work on behalf of their residents. So if we're not going to be out there day trading electricity contracts, we're there to provide good, stable rates for our customers. And that's the basic protection that's built into the system.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think it's a noble effort. I just have a few questions to help maybe understand a little bit more. You talked about the incentive programs. Will those be fleshed out before we have to make a decision? I know it's not going to be for several months, but because right now with Southern California Edison having those incentives and the choice not quite there yet.
Right. The answer is that once the board is formed of the JPA, it will start making those decisions around what kinds of incentive programs it wants to offer. So those decisions, this is a kind of a chicken and egg. Do you want to be at the table helping design those incentives? Do you want your community having a place to say, this is what we think our community needs, or do you want to wait until other communities have come together and said, here's what the programs will be for everybody, and then you can come in afterwards and if you decide to like it or not. We've been encouraging cities to come in early so they can be part of that design and decision-making process.
And I guess the other concern when you spoke, I was in the audience, one of the few people in the audience when you spoke at the city council, that if the county, and you mentioned it tonight, if the county, Long Beach and Torrance get together, that's 30%, and then a small community like Calabasas might not have such a big voice at the table, and that would be a bit of a concern, because when you talk about local control, it's local control over a huge area, not just local to Calabasas.
That's right, but that's why every vote first has to go to a vote of one member, one vote. That weighted vote is sort of a nuclear option, if you will. And the reason why I mentioned those three coming together, because 30%, they alone couldn't control this board. And after Torrance, the numbers start to get even smaller, so it probably would take a dozen members to get to 50%. The reason for raising that is I think it's meant to provide some assurance that the majority or all of the decisions, well, certainly all of the decisions, the initial decisions will be Calabasas has one vote just like the county has one vote. And that's why I mentioned even in Northern California, they've never had a need to call for a weighted vote.
And just two other quick questions. Wouldn't Edison try to adapt some of these really good energy sources once their long-term contracts are over? Because they don't want to they want to be more active, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the long-term trend that we've seen based on experience in some of the longer-term CCAs isn't that the CCA rates go up, but that the utilities rates actually start to come down to match it. We have a couple of natural advantages. One, because we'll be a government agency, we can borrow money at government rates, which are lower than the rates that Edison can borrow money at. So what we're paying for the power, because we're paying or essentially borrowing money to pay for the power, will be ultimately lower cost. The other is because we're not regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, we can be much more flexible and dynamic in terms of purchases. Today, Edison is asking the PUC for approval of a 15-year solar contract that they started down the road on 3 years ago. And the solar market has changed dramatically in 3 years, but it takes that long to work through that process. As Joseph mentioned, if we can find a good contract for solar out there today, we can take it to our board in a month and get it approved. So I think we have a natural advantage in terms of flexibility. We also have natural advantage in terms of just our cost of money.
My last quick question for Joseph. It sounds like what's going on in AppleValley is really great, but you mentioned, why didn't all of San Bernardino join in with that?
The county decided that they were not ready to form a JPA as of yet. So it was just a board decision. Whereas LA County feels that it's in their best interest. So it was just a decision of the board.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add one thing, building a little bit off of your first question and what Gary was just saying. So the nimbleness, I guess you could say, of power procurement that's available for the CCAs versus the investor-owned utilities is, I have a friend who used to work for Marin County, their CCA up north, and he would talk about the different customer programs and incentive programs, and they could design and tailor their incentive programs for the customers in a way that currently is really difficult, I would say, for Southern California Edison to do. So something to keep in mind is that because you have local control and a voice, there's really an opportunity to talk directly and say, you know what works for this type of customer stakeholder is going to be different. So let's not, let's differentiate how things are going to be rolled out and support this customer base with the needs that they have. So that's it's also an opportunity to get grant funding and do pilots and get more innovation. So that begins to snowball.
Thank you all very much.
I'm sorry, no more. You mentioned the article in the LA Times, and that's what raised my question, was that we read this article in the LA Times this week that at times there's a glut of energy. We're paying Arizona to take the energy, and it wasn't clear to me how that affects what we're doing. Are they going to pay us to take the energy? Are we going to go out and contract for this so there won't be a glut anymore? How does that work with what we're proposing to do?
Yeah, if they'll pay us to take the energy, we'll gladly take it. But those, I think, because we're starting from scratch, we do have the ability to start to take advantage of those kinds of market distortions that have started to occur, and to our advantage. And I think that we'll be able to go out and get lots of solar energy at very low prices because people want to lock it in on a must-take basis. The other side of that article is that the PUC, as you probably saw in the article, continues to authorize the building of new fossil fuel generation. That's not something that the CCA is going to be interested in. We're not going to be interested in buying new power plants or building new power plants and operating them over the long term. We don't have the same economic incentive to do so. They have an economic incentive under the way the current utility system is designed. That's where they make a large part of their profits. We just simply won't be in that same business. We'll be in a different, we'll maybe buying power from a fossil fuel plant. Of course, we're not going to be at 100% renewable from day one, but we're not going to be out there building power plants, and so we're not going to have that and then not have them run but 5% of the time. That just won't be our business model.
I think you can also say, though, that this is an opportunity where innovation, again, can step in. We're so fixated on solar here because we have a lot of sunshine, and it's beautiful, and it's kind of an easy, that's in quotes, solution. However, really, the biggest pain point right now, I would say, is storage, and that would resolve a lot of this glut of energy at in the middle of the day. So by having a CCA, and Southern California is very interested in this too. I want to be clear that certainly from our organization standpoint, load serving entity, whether it's a CCA or Southern California Edison, we're agnostic. We just love innovation getting anywhere. But the energy storage piece is really interesting in the context of a CCA, because you can imagine you're awake now as a consumer. You're suddenly invested in what's happening with your energy in your community. So you might be willing to go out there and say, you know what, I'll put in energy storage in my garage, or I'm really interested in our community having community level energy storage. And that can be not just batteries, which is one solution, but it can be using the temperature difference underground. You can be using, I don't want to give names, but there are just a lot of different options out there that would sort of blow your mind when you really think about it, even to the point where people are talking about flywheels again. So that kind of opens up a whole new door of solutions that helps dissipate some of the responsibility, but also the opportunity to integrate your life with the grid and to help offer solutions.
I just wanted to tell everyone that we were unanimous, so it's not a surprise. I voted for initiating this process, but the City Council is going to take a final vote on joining in August or September. So if you have comments, please contact any of us, either individually or together. To some extent, it sounds too good to be true. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be more green. Nothing's going to change. You're going to flip the switch. It's going to go on. And that was my first reaction. I have read the studies. We had an independent study analysis. We've talked to other communities that do it, and I do think that it's highly likely, virtually ensured, that those things will occur. I'll tell you, my personal concern has more to do with joining a county-wide group, okay, and then having to go and vote and figure out and so some of the details of what the programs that will be offered will be decided by that group. So I don't know exactly what they'll be. They'll probably be very close to what they are now, but we don't know for sure. And in my mind, maybe it would be better if we did it ourselves, or maybe it would be better if we did it with Agoura and Westlake and not joined with whatever city, cities in the eastern part and other parts of the county. But for the time being, our choice is this or Edison, where you don't have any of these choices. So I think so my position so far has been that's better than what we have, gives us more options, and as we go on in the future, maybe there'll be other things that we do. But I just wanted to let you know where our thinking was, and I invite everyone's comments, as I know that my colleagues do as well. So thank you very much.
I
few more questions. Some of that I brought up at our council meeting, but I know we talk about the incentives. And one of the speakers here tonight, or one of the residents here tonight, asked about a program for seniors, and you said that would stay in place. Can you explain how that will stay in place, but other incentives wouldn't?
That one is state mandated, and so that one is just continues as is without change.
But if there are any other programs that residents are currently taking advantage of under Edison, those would not continue as of today, because we don't know what incentives would be developed.
Right, although we assume, and again, based on past experience from other CCAs, we assume that we'll offer the same and perhaps better, more generous programs than what Edison is currently providing.
And what's the timing? If the city does, how many cities need to adopt, how many cities need to join in order for this to go into effect?
Just one, and in fact, tonight, Rolling Hills Estates is doing its second reading of the ordinance, so as of tonight, they said their mayor will sign the JPA tonight.
So
it will go into effect.
So then when will the incentives and everything start being discussed?
We anticipate that we'll probably have a first board meeting the first week of August with the 3 or 4 cities that have adopted at that point. We probably won't making incentive decisions at that first board meeting. There'll be a lot of organizing. We'll start meeting probably monthly at that point, so September, October, and there'll be a point at which we do need to start seriously talking about what are the customer programs.
And then my last question is, at what point, if a majority of the cities in the county decide to opt in and do this, then there's less ratepayers to Edison. So where are their costs going to be covered? I want to make sure that by doing this, our residents aren't going to end up paying more on some hidden fees or something. Edison's going to have to make their costs, and I want to understand how that's going to happen,
Right,
not
so
at the expense of our residents.
There's 3 places where they make up their costs. One is they're going to continue to charge for delivering the electricity, so there's wires charges as they're called.
But the ratepayer will have to pay that.
Ratepayer, whether you're in Edison or CCA territory, you'll have to pay a delivery fee for the electricity. They do charge for the service of the billing, so the meter reading and billing services.
Sorry to interrupt. I guess my question is, where will they recoup their costs?
They'll recoup their cost through the third one, and that's where I was headed. So the third one is any power that they may have procured on behalf of customers who are now leaving or have now left. They have the ability to essentially hold harmless their existing customers. So they've got a calculation methodology that all of the utilities, PG&E and San Diego Gas and Electric and Edison, have agreed on, that they've proposed to the PUC. There is a proceeding going on at the PUC to determine what is a fair way of allocating those costs between remaining customers and departing customers, and that's probably going to be a 2 or 3 year process.
So then existing Edison customers, people that decide to opt out of the CCEA, will probably end up paying more than their current rates.
The idea is that everybody would be held essentially neutral, that there would be no impact on either the departing load or on remaining load.
If I could maybe address that too. Edison charges what Gary was referring to is a PCIA fee. That's the Power Charge Indifference Adjustment Fee. And basically, for those that are CCA customers, Edison passes on the fee that they have assessed for those customers leaving. That's so that the remaining customers are not don't bear the burden of the customers who leave. Where we are most interested in, AppleValley is a part of the California Community Choice Authority Association. It's a statewide association. What we are more interested in is that fee that Edison assesses us is not as transparent as it needs to be. We need to know how those fees are calculated and how long those fees will be imposed upon us. And we're working, and I'm sure LA County is working too, to make sure that the CPUC opens that door so that we can see what these calculations are. So, because it wouldn't be fair for Edison if we all left and the remaining customers had to bear all of that. So understanding that, we just want it to be fair and balanced, and that fee is imposed upon the CCA customers. We've taken that into consideration, and our rates are still lower than what Edison's is even with that fee that we have to pay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Dennis Washburn, and I'm a Calabasan, and have been at this for a long, long time. I'm really excited to have this audience and our council and staff and you all here dealing with the energy component of our lives. But there's soil, there's atmosphere, and there's water. 20% of our energy is moving water around, and it could be even more as we're dealing with reclamation and closed circuit, water resources management, things like that. So what we're doing tonight and what you've helped us do, the three of you, guests and our council as well, is helping us understand how personal responsibility can make a real difference. The fact that everybody in this room, and we've lost half of them, but there's a lot of folks here tonight because they're curious about what they can do individually, and this is a means by which we can actually empower individuals. So the question is, in a way, what can we do to deal with the entire system analysis, not just the energy component, but each of us is responsible for about 24 pounds of carbon a day. How about that? If I make a choice not to take the car to the supermarket, but take the bus, that's a way. Costs me time, but still, everybody can, in fact, with this kind of engagement, start to become understanding of their system's requirements and their system impacts. And they'll start asking, well, can I use the battery in my Tesla to run my house if there's an outage? Not now, but I could. Mm-hmm. That could help the CCA because it meets our obligations with less energy, less cost. So would you address the other areas in which, and briefly, because everybody wants to go home.
Yes.
But what could come out of this from each of your perspectives in dealing with soil, water, energy, atmosphere? Because technology is clearly enabling all of us to deal with this now. Thank you.
Wow, I love that question. As the Chief Sustainability Officer for the county, I relish an opportunity to talk about something besides energy, because that's what I've been talking about mostly over the last 6 or 7 months that I've been in the position. But we actually are creating a comprehensive sustainability program for the region. So just as the Board of Supervisors said, let's not just do CCA, Community Choice Energy, for just the county, but we're going to do it in partnership with cities. We're working now to establish a sustainability policy and plan in partnership with cities that will work on a regional scale, and it'll look at most of, as you point, you're well aware, and I'm sure, and you point out, most environmental issues, most of these issues are not jurisdiction specific. Stormwater, when it rained all last winter, that crossed many jurisdictional boundaries before it ended up in the LA River and out at the ocean. How do we capture that? We need to work together as cities to do that. Similarly with what's known as the urban heat island effect, where because of the solar, the building up of our communities, they're warmer than the surrounding countryside. So how do we start to mitigate that? You don't do that on a jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis. You do that on a regional scale. So we've hired some good staff, including water experts and land use, transportation, housing experts. We're still looking for open space and biodiversity experts, but we're going to be working together with cities to do that. So appreciate the opportunity to plug my main job.
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up with that. Gary had mentioned earlier that that the county and basically all jurisdictions are mandated by the state to implement a climate action plan. And that climate action plan takes into consideration not only electrical power, but all aspects of your community. And that's a web. I mean, we're not isolated in AppleValley. Like Gary said, when it rains in AppleValley, it floods in Hesperia. Don't tell them that. But, so this small part allows us to be able to address some of those issues in a more effective manner. In a more targeted manner. What Calabasas will be able to do is be able to address the needs of your citizens here. I mean, by joining the county or participating in the CCA, you'll have a bigger voice in implementing things a lot faster than what you would if you did not have this choice. So we're all part of the plan, and this helps us implement that plan more efficiently.
I just add that green infrastructure in general takes a long time, broadly speaking, to change. You know, deals are made, contracts are signed. It's 10, 20, 30 years in some cases that that contract will last. So it's not always a fast-moving process, and you have to kind of wait, just like the utilities in this case for stranded assets. They have to wait for those contracts to term out. So as a citizen, if you're living in a city that has a climate action plan, you have a roadmap already. Use it, read it, share it, think about how you can help support it. And what's amazing is once you tap in, I mean, you have a very progressive, thoughtful city council here and staff who are well informed, and I'm sure they would love to have engaged citizens who don't just go in and say, you know, GHG gases and this is terrible, but come to them saying, I want to help. How can I help deploy solutions? So my ask to the group, and I think for your question, such a great one, is you actually have more power than you realize in this equation. And sitting here and getting educated is part of it, but the other part of it is picking up your pocketbook and making decisions. And part of my job is to help you make those decisions faster with more information that are more cost effective and improve your life. So at the Clean Tech Incubator, we're looking for new technologies. That's why I ask at every meeting I go to, please send me the names of anybody. You sign up yourself, number one. That's what you can do right now. When you leave here, you can go to the Energize California website and sign up and join, and you'll get emails about events happening, policy shifts, opportunities to demo or pilot new technologies. All of that's being built out. And then the other piece would be get engaged in your community and try to offer solutions. So we have entrepreneurs who are dying to get into your home so you can try out a new energy meter. Or if you're looking to purchase solar, there are lots of interesting ways to purchase solar on a sort of agnostic marketplace. That's really shifting the cost structure of solar procurement. It's not one-to-one, you're getting robocalls anymore. Now they're trying to create a platform. That kind of business innovation is happening. And so the more you keep your ear to the ground, if you just connect with us, we'll connect you to some of that innovation. That's part of my job.
Madam Mayor, last word.
I wanted to thank each one of our panelists. Join me in giving them a round of applause. I think the information you provided us and the different perspectives has been very helpful. And I want to say, as someone who has been fighting for sensible, environmental, sustainable changes in the city of Calabasas, this has to be one of the most exciting initiatives because it involves everybody in the city. And the turnout this evening was just terrific, and I know that we'll just continue to be involved. And frankly, one of the reasons the city of Calabasas took the initiative to get involved early was for the very reason that Gary stated, is that the earlier you get involved and become part of the decision-making committees, you can influence the outcome and the incentives. And so I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank my colleagues for their support of this movement, this energy movement. And I hope you'll all come back for our next forum. So thank you, and thank you to John as well.
Thank you all for coming.